Much longer you guys got, you think? Done.
Well, the governor hopes for that October first, but it's gonna be November first.
They got incentives on it? They got voted to get, they get penalty?
No incentives.
Spend in California for a long time, they take it around. And some visiting, friends are on mission.
Problem is they have it. They have to do this side, then do that side.
Yeah.
One traffic on the outside, so they'll
We
in the
have a
middle,
daughter,
then do the
two
heavy
grandsons, and son-in-law in Pasadena,
So it's like
and, they're pretty tight.
too many.
And,
Is that after high
she's
school?
there
12 weeks, you're not.
with her grandboys, so she had surgery,
It's at that.
screws, that delayed it, she was just fine though.
Ready, Steve?
Fun? Not fun, but it wasn't like.
All right, I will call this Dalton Township Planning Commission Work Session meeting to order for June 20th, 2023. First thing we'll do roll call. Dave, I am here. Jesse? Here. Todd? Here. Lee? Here. John? Here. Casey? Here. And Kevin? Here. All right. Anything to add to the agenda?
We just need to change the date on the agenda to the 11th.
I just read verbatim, man. I'm not even,
I was gonna
Not
say
even
something,
engaged.
but kept
Oh,
okay, well, we'll take that change. Does anyone like to make the motion to approve the agenda?
Make the motion to approve the agenda with the
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We'll open up the public comment at 6:02. And we have no public, so I will close it at 6:02. All right, we are now into our discussion items, the accessory dwelling unit.
got some comments back from the board. See those? Okay.
Yeah, regular packet, you mean? Yeah, I think it must be in the regular.
Yeah, I'm trying to find them now. Okay. One comment was 1,000 square foot minimum, right? I think that was excessive. And on the right topic.
Yeah.
On the second page, under public hearing. So I get what you're trying to say, but it's not grammatically correct. It says,
Yeah,
then the application may only be approved by the planning commission upon after a public hearing.
that's,
What's upon after mean?
means I forgot to delete some.
Oh,
This is just a very, very rough draft.
it's really good, other than
It's
just,
a lot, this is one of those things that we're just gonna have to spend a lot of time
okay,
making sure we get it right. I could see someone being very upset
okay.
and certain circumstances, so we need to make sure that.
Well, and I think number four, I4 should just continue on part of the public hearing. Because otherwise it's the only one of the four that doesn't have like a bolded heading.
Yeah.
And it's still talking about public hearing, so I think it should just be a continuation of that paragraph.
What I have is, improve the minutes in the last session. Oh, we do that next week. Oh, that's next week. Oh my gosh. We're just close it.
Yeah.
Hey. I don't think I'd sleep.
I don't know what day it is, so
Yeah,
I got.
You know, next up,
They set us up to a good start, right?
under Hollins, the zoning administrator reviews it, makes sure it meets all the standards, basically pre-approves it, and then sends it out. In our situation, it's kind of like saying, okay, the zoning administrator says it's good. Now, you want the planning commission to say yea or nay. And I think it's probably a better idea once we get the application to send it out instead of doing the review. I would just make sure the application is complete, but then planning commission will do the review if one is requested. If not, then the zoning administrator can approve it administratively. Because I think essentially you're just setting up the ordinance so that the planning commission can zoning administrator does his review, says it's okay, and then so once it's wrong with the planning commission, we'll overrule them. I think it'd be a good idea if you keep those separate. In regards to infrastructure, number G, that's standard. I did hear back from Paul at the road commissioner. He does have concerns with if we were to allow up to 4 ADUs on property. If, in addition to the single family home, that would essentially be potentially 5 families living on the same property. And if it was on a shared driveway, it would potentially be 10 traffic generating locations on the same driveway. That was one concern that he had with it. So if each
house gets a vehicle,
Yeah,
or if 2 parcels shared a common driveway,
Yeah.
then you could have potentially 10 on that single driveway.
Yeah.
That's designed for only two parcels or 2 plotings.
I think the fire chief had some concerns with this too. Whenever you're adding more buildings and more people living and possibly sharing a single driveway that's already not really enough for a house.
Yeah.
He was a little concerned about access to these other dwellings and because in here it doesn't really say like what we would require to like how do you get to their house? Like it doesn't really.
Yeah, and ideally it would be you would have a driveway going to it. You'd be sharing the existing driveway.
Yeah, it can be very confusing for emergency services when you go up there and you're just like, whoa, I don't know where to go.
And I think
It's all one address, right?
Yes, it'll all be one address because
So
it's
if you
one
call it in
utility.
and say, I have a medical emergency at,
I don't know if it'll all be one address though, because, and so with that and the property requirements on F5 says utilities for the ADU shall not be metered separately. But,
They'd have to have.
you know, I mean, well, so, for example, I mean, if the house only has 100 amp service and it doesn't support the load of an ADU, consumers is gonna say, we're gonna run a new service to that building, and then they're going to give it an address.
They probably wouldn't. In our dealings with consumers, they would probably run new primary to the house and then say, okay, you're on your own. So,
I don't know. At my house, I built my house and then 2 years, and I have a 200 amp service, plenty. And then 2 years later, I built a pole barn and I just told consumers, I don't want to run power from my house to my pole barn because I got to disturb my yard. I want a service on its own. All right, no problem. Do it on there.
how does your bill come? Is it the same
Two separate
address?
bills. Nope, it's got its own address.
Oh.
It has its own address and I get a separate bill for the minimum $35 a month, whatever. But I can see consumers basically, that's one that jumps out of my head, where
Yeah,
they
so no.
say, no, we're gonna run a new service to that.
Consumers doesn't issue those.
I was gonna say, although addresses are no longer,
Okay.
yes,
Doesn't know.
that changed. That, thank goodness that changed consumers.
So that leaves the address thing out of it, but that still makes me question the utilities shall not be metered separately. I mean, some of them might not have a choice.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know the necessity of that really. Same thing might go for natural gas, right? They might just run a new service to it, depending on what it is, the requirements.
I know we discussed this a lot last month. I'm having trouble picturing 4 ADUs. Who and what and where did they come from? And why are they
I was
there?
thinking like one, like your kids don't wanna live there.
Like 4, what is the?
Now,
Now,
there's the number there again, if it's 40 acres. That's one parcel. Why would it matter?
That's true, but when you look at this, this is kind of confusing to me. It says parcels of more than 5 acres shall be no more than 4 ADUs, but the combined area 3,000 square feet is the total. So you're talking 750 square feet. Even though you have 40 acres.
it's like maybe if you had 40 acres, you'd build individual cabins for your family to stay while they hunt, or I'm trying to figure out
Right.
who are these people? What are they doing there? You know, they're permanent residents, they're
Could just be all your kids.
a mini
I'm
house,
just saying,
okay, a mini house.
I got, everybody's got, I got 4 kids, for example. I got 2 sets of in-laws. We got, my wife's son living in the basement. He might live in one.
Okay,
I mean, I don't want a lot of property. I'm just.
I
giving
understand,
examples,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then you got so many divorced people now. I mean,
I get
like
the-
3 sets of grandparents. Or
I get the grandparents thing for sure. And maybe a special needs situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, I'm coming around. Forgot about the 40-acre thing too,
But at some point, it's probably in the best interest of public safety for land splits to take place so that everybody has their own parcel. Yeah, yes.
Especially for getting it down to 720 square feet.
But then you can't do that with the utilities all going through one. entrance, would it?
No, it wouldn't be an ADU anymore. It'd just be it'd be a
It's still
split parcel.
freestanding building.
So this happens, like, I don't know, they're old, like, when I used to work at White Lady Ambulance, we'd get to, like, Blue Lake Township, we'd go down this long driveway, and then there'd be like 7 forks, and it's like, what fork do you take? Like, someone is having a heart attack right now, and we have no idea where to go. I don't wanna go too far the other way and make a lot of these again, because they started taking care of them and getting rid of them in Blue Lake Township.
greenhouse signs are awesome.
I would say it has to be clearly marked.
Yes.
Fire services.
Right, I think that really should be in here, like those Red Cross things you can buy at the hardware store for like $15. ADU number 1, ADU number
I
2.
think that might be requiring of the building.
Okay,
But even just to make sure that.
Jesse, you know, using your family as an example, would you envision a nice small ranch-ish style home or mini house?
What I envision what people are gonna do, you know?
Yeah, what,
I mean, I think everybody's gonna do what they do. Everybody's gonna do their own thing. I don't know.
would the mini house work with the right utilities?
See why not?
Yeah, it meets building code. Should
Yeah.
be fine.
I just don't know how you could run, let's say you had 4 little 750 square foot shacks. Each one had a mini split in it or something for heat and cool. And you run all that through one service.
You're not.
You're screwed. So
No,
that's kind of weird.
I don't think you are.
That one rule is kind of weird.
That's why I'm saying. I would-
Let's just be,
I would be.
you would have to share one heat source. You could have individual heat sources. It's just the gas and the electric would then be on the same bill.
Feed it through one panel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, by saying it shall not be metered separately, I don't know, in a lot of situations that might be possible. I think we should just get rid of that, I think, unless. I think a lot of times you're not gonna have a choice but to meter them separately because they're gonna have their own fee.
that just gets really ugly when you have this meter is in Cindy Smith's name and Cindy Smith doesn't even own the parcel. And they're gonna, I don't really even understand how consumers does that, like, yours both come to Jesse McCormick though,
Correct.
even though,
Yep.
because, and so the problem is that you're not really
then
metering
give
it
it-
separately, you just have
It is metered separately, it's not a
Wait.
meter.
but it's
It's
the
a separate
same
bill.
person though.
Yep.
That's the thing. I think that's what this is basically trying to say, is that one person, the parcel owner needs to be responsible for the meter, for
Why
the,
do we care about that?
I just don't wanna make because I wanna save people from themselves. Like, you got a lady who's got, like, she's got the ADU and her power is there, and now then the power company is gonna put a lien on the parcel because the lady didn't pay her power, and it's just like,
That's all their problem. We
yeah,
can't
I
protect
guess.
that. I mean, the way I look at it, I guess, I don't know.
I'm visualizing now like the detached rentals with the, you know,
But
within
more
the,
than likely, they're gonna be your family. Yes.
which then would have separate meters, separate address,
All in your name.
maybe. You know, in lieu of mobile homes being dropped wherever, I think, you know, we're headed in the right direction. It's just sort of shaping it up, you know, I don't know how that's gonna ease every situation, but that's why we're here, and Steve sits in the office.
When I was thinking about an accessory dwelling unit, I was thinking about something small. I wasn't thinking about like, oh, let's just build 4 or 5 houses on one parcel. Because you certainly can run, we run 4 RV spaces off one 200 amp breaker, like every
Right,
two.
right.
So you could easily, that's why, like, not metered separately. If you're putting a tiny home there, then, but if you're trying to run like like 5 ranch houses that are full houses and then yeah, you're not gonna be able to do it. But is that what we're intending? I mean, are we intending to let people just build a bunch of houses on one parcel?
Well, we can't.
Can't be wise in time.
I don't either.
Well, I mean, they're still limited to what the combined square footage that would be allowed in accessory buildings. So they're still limited to that amount of square footage.
Yeah, but if you have a 40-acre parcel, then you've got
Yep.
a lot of room.
Yeah, but you can only still put 4 750 square foot buildings. That's it. So it's very,
And then I don't see the need to take out the part about metering separately, because you can easily run 4 small, and not sure it should be 4. I'm thinking like 2. That's your house, and then 2, like,
I think that's the least of their problems. I think that this septic would be, you know, the one major.
no, that's easy. You can get like multiple septics on one parcel. Like, some people have like 3 or 4 septics for all their different areas. That's,
And then
the health department issues those pretty easily. I just don't think it's a good idea for us to tell you, okay, yeah, you used to have to do a land split, but now you can basically, if you can meter it separately and you can have it in someone else's name, then aren't we basically letting people circumvent like private roads and stuff? Like, it doesn't say anywhere you have to be related. It just says that you have a 40-acre parcel, you have your house, and then you have these 4 other accessory dwelling units that you're renting out to complete strangers. And you don't have proper private roads, you don't have proper egress for fire department. I just think this might go way too far.
That would be the concern with having up to 4 on a single property.
Right,
They would all likely share a driveway.
right.
That'd essentially be 5 single-family homes on a driveway that's meant for 2.
My original intent of this was like, hey, your kids want to live in a small house behind yours, or your mother-in-law wants her own house, but I think this might be going too far towards things that people will do. Like, I don't want to create a mess. I don't want to create a mess that other townships have been trying to clean up for the last 15 years. And now we're going to think of going down the same path that they're trying to go away from, because they've lived it and they realize how bad it became and how much of a mess it was in different ways.
I think if there's a problem, there's always a way to solve it. If it's a house identification problem, you put your 4 addresses out at the street. Then if there's a Y or a split, you make sure that it's labeled at the split. That's kind of how you would manage that part, but
But they shouldn't have 4 addresses if it's one parcel. Like, isn't that just like a houses on a private road with no real private road? If you go to a driveway, the fire department shows up at the end of the driveway and there's all these address signs everywhere, isn't that basically, they're gonna think, oh, I can turn there must be a 66-foot turnaround out there to turn my fire truck around. They're gonna head straight into this house, find out they have to back all the way down this driveway. Or, you know, you got an ambulance going priority one to the hospital and they can't turn around and they're backing up, you know.
yeah, you have to do something about the width of the driveway and height.
Could say
Where did
that,
the number 4 come from? Did we look at other townships or cities or?
that number was thrown around
Yeah,
That's what
at the last meeting, because that was what was allowed for accessory buildings.
You have a lot of stuff in there that a number is
4
just.
seems to.
So I just threw that in as
Yeah,
a
yeah, not necessarily. This is a weird one, you know,
Yeah,
A lot
your
of
brain
variables.
is working, I can hear
a
it.
lot of variables.
Honestly, this is a mess.
A lot of
Blame all the
variables.
smart people talk.
I don't think it has to be a mess. I mean, like,
Oh,
The
let's
shipping
say,
container
I only have
village.
2 kids. But let's say they lived in my house. Those 2 cars are gonna be coming out of my driveway.
No matter what.
No matter what. So what if I put them in a shack out back? It's the same dang amount of cars. I don't know.
Personally, I know this might surprise everyone, but I really like 4 accessory buildings, but but they can also be homes. It's a little extreme, but on the same property, and the entrepreneur in me thinks this is a wonderful idea.
Spit it out.
But I don't know. Just a lot of complications, a lot of stuff I don't even understand. Like all of the stuff about meters and all this. No, I'm listening.
And I was making sure, because usually at some point, we do this thing and we go around, and then you come as a voice of reason and going.
Thank you.
I just go.
I appreciate. I need that.
It kind of brings us back to.
You know, you come back, you're like, we're all getting lost in the weeds sometime, you know, we gotta just say what we're trying to do here. How do you do something like you were suggesting? Because that's where we start.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's,
what if we just cut it in half then? We just say 2,
I
and
was
then,
gonna say that too.
and then what if we do that and then we just see how it rolls and worst
Could you
case
do
scenario is
2,
people's gonna
2,
want more,
or
right?
unless
But
you go
right
to,
now they get nothing, so 2's better than nothing. I don't know, I don't care.
is there a way to do it as
You could
beyond
one
2 is
by
a,
one extra by special land use, or special land use for any more than one.
yeah, that's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be nice.
yeah, on a case by case
I don't
basis
really
too.
care if they have an apartment building there. I'm not. Maybe that's not my exact feeling, but
I get
That's
you.
the major. The
We
major
can always
issue is
loosen it
going to
up.
be working with the road commission and making sure they're happy with the number of dwellings being serviced. And I
It
think,
almost sounds like we're
Yeah.
encouraging apartments, but I know we're not.
Really? Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
my
I
original
understand.
thought on 4 was that you were allowed 4 accessory buildings, so I was like, why not just make it easy and say, we don't care. if
Well,
accessory
that's the-
building
that's
or
the
not,
other
it's building.
problem.
Yeah, so what?
let's say they have
Storage.
2, and then that's 3 homes on the property, and then each one of those is gonna have a shed or something, and then all of a sudden we're up to another problem where like now we have to allow accessory buildings for accessory. I mean, I could see an instance where somebody would want
Yeah.
like mother and father-in-law
Yeah.
shack out back, and then I could even see like, oh, we also have kids that never left, like kick them out of the house, but in the backyard. But like, once you get beyond that, they're probably not relatives. They're and not that I care who lives where,
Right.
but
think
I
you're-
like the idea of 1 plus, because if you have 1 ADU, that still leaves 2 other accessory buildings not that you're living in. Like whether it's a shed or detached garage or something like that. Per living.
Those don't count if they're under 200 square feet.
Which they don't right now anyways.
So
they count towards the area, but not the number. Okay.
The whole point of the building code is to make sure that you're building something that if you sell, die, whatever, the next day, it's safe enough for somebody else to inhabit. And I wanna make sure that when we're doing this, that we think of that too. Like, we don't wanna create a situation that's unsafe for the future people that might be coming to this. Because nobody ever thinks they will need to call 911 for a serious issue until they're calling dispatch again and they're like, why are they not here yet? Because they're sitting at the road trying to figure out where to find you and can you help at all? Like, well, you saw up in Montague, they set one of their flashing light things at the end of a driveway. By the time the ambulance got on scene, somebody had stolen it and they had no idea. It's still missing. Montague Fire is looking for it. It's people do that stuff. They think it's funny, and the ambulance took an additional like several minutes to find the long driveway because the fire department had marked it and was gone. And long driveways. I was talking with Alan like 2 weeks ago about long driveways and how difficult it makes their job because they're already running. The response time of the fire department's very good, but ProMed's response times are 25 to 30 minutes sometimes, and
Right.
And then they need to know immediately like where that driveway is because they're already on borrowed time by the time they get there. So it sounds fine when you start thinking about like a smaller lot. You're like, oh, here's that, and like right behind it, there's the accessory dwelling unit. I can easily see it. I can get to it. But when you're talking about these large parcels, it starts to become where it could go off the rails pretty easily. I think reducing it. I think it's one thing to say, hey, we have 4 buildings, that's my shed, that's my tools, that's my whatever, and nothing's like living in it. But when you're talking about like a 24/7, someone is living in this, then it needs to be readily accessible and it needs to be easily labeled. And there needs to not be so many that it becomes complicated.
Well, really, by the time, if you start running wire, any distance, I mean, you're gonna have to have some pretty big old fucking wire to even get out of your panels. I mean, really, it'd be more pipe. Oh, by the time you get done, it'd be more beneficial on the side.
Yeah.
Fine. If you're gonna put some ADU on the back corner of your 40 over there, and your house is on the front,
Right.
Like,
You're gonna have to.
that's a pain in the day, no matter what.
3-aught wire around a.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge wire going back.
Do you have a required maximum distance from the dwelling?
Yeah, I'd rather
Make sure it's
rather not, 'cause it makes more stuff, but yeah, I understand. Electrical's something too.
Yeah, because I mean, he makes a good point. If you're way out in the corner, oh yeah, that's the ADU way down there. Like the accessibility is going to be very poor, like for emergency services. Like I don't know, I don't backing up down a long driveway when you're like in the middle of the night when you got someone who's actively having a heart attack is not fun. Let me just tell you that. You have to have somebody waving you back. I mean, you ever been in an ambulance? The blind spots are like the size of like a small car. So I don't know if you say it's covered by the building code. So having accessible driveways, like
We'll add that into the specific requirements for ADUs that they have to be accessible.
Identified and clearly identified.
Yeah.
I think Casey makes a good point though, because if it's elderly or
right, if your mother-in-law is like living
Well,
there, then
if it's special needs, 20-year-olds in transition, leave the house permanently, whatever, it could be a mixed bag, but
I think if we made them subject to fire chief review, that
Yeah.
might be a good idea, just to
Yeah.
make sure it's accessible for emergencies.
yeah, reinforce that. That's a great idea. Get them involved.
yeah. Maybe he can just maybe
You
he
can have a
either
standard.
yeah he could have a
Or he could
standard
have a
or he could
standard,
review it, but we at
because, like,
least should ask him.
The county has a standard. I mean,
Right.
a standard size cul-de-sac or hammerhead style turnaround that's adequate for fire trucks.
You might say the main drive gotta be less than 1,000 feet, because that's how much hose they carry somebody in the fire,
True.
put the tank in the road and drive in.
Is it 1,000?
Like Kevin said, if you're in a big family, the number of vehicles you have in there, you have 7 kids. There's nothing requiring them to do anything different than what we're
Right.
talking about right now. It's just, I guess, because we're inviting in other dwellings, it becomes a little more, I guess the target's easier. Because we have no say in it.
Right, I can see where the road commission would say that, but I mean, really, if you think about it, they don't really have a leg to stand on. We'd rather not have more than 2 units per drive. Well, good for you, but that's not happening in real life anyway. I care more about the accessibility than the number of cars using someone's driveway.
Do you want to table this for a rewrite modification for next month or?
The number 4 was kind of discussed, do we want to make it less and then have a review for anything above a certain
I
number?
think it should be 1 and then we review it or something.
The
Unless,
first one by right and then
One is-
special. land.
yes, 1 by this, yeah.
Three too many?
Where's that good?
2 not enough?
It's good. Plus an additional.
I mean, if we said 1 and then a review, would we need to even make a cap? Because we're reviewing it, couldn't we just, you get 1 and then anything above 1, you need a review. But I'm not even sure we need to make, well, I mean, I guess.
It is a special land use permit.
Right. But would you have a cap though? Like you can go for a special land use, but don't come to us for more than like 2 or 3 or 4. Cause it'll be no, I don't know.
It may not
Is
be
there,
a cap because it would depend on each individual properties, whether or not they could sustain for.
Mhm.
Like if somebody has a 1 acre parcel
It's 300 square foot.
versus a 40 acre parcel, 40 acre parcel is gonna be more likely to sustain for the septic and everything. Well, the 1 acre may or may not, it would depend on the,
These wouldn't be separately deeded.
no, they would, the requirement is that the owner of the property resides on the property.
They
They
cannot
can't
be
be
sold.
No, they can't be sold separately.
They retain ownership, everything
Yes.
on there is
Okay.
that person's. So
Okay.
it is single ownership.
Is there any demand for more than 1 case?
Maybe in special circumstances.
I mean, I could see, obviously, there's always a.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm concerned about is like, especially, it's tempting to say 1 plus upon review, possibly more. But like, we're not always gonna be the people here. Alright,
yeah,
so like, especially, you know, if there's, I don't know, I could just see where that could get really contentious or somebody without the same spirit of looking at this.
Things about stuff that's up for approval is, yeah, you can do it, but you can't.
Yeah, I mean, that could be really, you know, like, there's no standard for like whose situation is merited and whose isn't.
Right.
And then it's just up to the whim of some people. Even if we have good intentions, that's not everybody.
We just put a hard number.
I could see lots of unintended consequences of this.
That's-
I'm inclined to stay close to 1. Just to, because I think this could easily kind of get out of control. You could still meet all of these requirements and not have any, and be violating the spirit of why we're even doing this, like
So
easily.
the limit's 0.
Yeah, you can't have an accessory dwelling
Yeah.
unit.
Wouldn't it, normally I'm against like arbitrary numbers, you know, all that stuff, but like, it would make it a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would make it a lot simpler if we just said 1 now. And then if there was some need, like a situation that came up where it's like, well, you know, I have 1, but I also, you know, I got my special needs son, you know, he's a little bit older, like, and then if there's a true need that arises for more, then we can figure out in an already working system how more fits in. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does,
it
because
does.
some of the instances are gonna be temporary. If you're taking care of a elderly parent, I mean, you know where the thing's going, it's, you know, till something happens, or if you put 20-year-old child there, they could be there till they're 60.
Yeah,
I mean,
let everything happen, but like,
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes
there's-
it's a lot of consideration.
Yeah, oh, exactly. I mean, there's,
What was that situation down at the horse place down here that we approved something like
Okay,
that?
I was just gonna say that since I've been on the
We
planning
did
commission, we have already talked about accessory dwelling units and decided it was a bad idea, that it'd be a really slippery slope a long time ago. And now we're right back here and we're now remembering why we thought it was gonna be such a mess to begin with.
well, we didn't have the idea when we were talking about, because that was a business. And then they were saying it was putting a dwelling on a business property. I think that was the question, is can you,
Is it a business? I mean, is
I
it what
think-
it's classified as? I mean, I know.
I'm not sure. I thought it was something,
For like agricultural employee working on site.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
Yes.
In that specific circumstance. That wasn't allowed.
But didn't we
Yeah.
also talk about like
no,
having
we
two
didn't
houses
know.
on the same parcel before?
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
Okay, the board, yeah, I think we talked about it already. Thought it was a terrible idea.
I know this is something that the board voted to direct
Okay.
discussion.
How long ago was that?
But the thing down here,
That was 2 years ago though.
yeah, I was gonna say, that's like right when we started, or I started.
Didn't they end up doing something back there? Isn't there
Yeah,
some,
I thought we approved.
there's something back there. I know that someone lives on site, or at least,
I know they were approved for a house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what they moved into. On this side, the
I'll have
west
to read
side,
back in
west
the
side.
minutes, because I know we talked, I remember talking about
Yeah, that might have been another discussion.
people living on the same parcel and how it could get ugly.
Yeah, ag, when you start getting the ag, that can change.
I don't remember talking about this regarding that. I remember doing the deal for that down there, for that horse farm. I remember that. but I
We
don't
didn't call them accessory dwelling unit, we were simply, it was a segue from what we were talking about. We started talking about what a mess it would be if there were two houses on the same parcel. I'm sure it's in the minutes, I'll look back to it, see if what we talked about back then, but. I can
Back then, we also did, context of this being like truly incidental to the principal house.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a much nicer framework than what we were talking about at the time.
There have been a lot more municipalities that have adopted similar those that we can look at and see how they're going.
Yeah, with the housing crisis, this makes a lot of sense to try to get some framework that's workable. I just wanna make sure we don't go too far.
it could always be reviewed. If you say one, if one's a number, then we throw it out there and say, let's see what happens, and if there is a need. I mean, I don't wanna see, then starts hitting the ZBA where everything,
Yeah.
you know, I need two, because I have. But
Right.
at the same time, I think one is a fair,
Dip our toes in and, yeah, nice stepping stone.
2 kids and one I'm ready to kick out already.
yeah.
15.
You're waiting to build.
Yeah, that's not. I don't,
Well, and
We
does
include
this,
something in here for like a trade. I can trade you a 15-year-old for a,
none
Maybe.
of that. We don't wanna get into that.
what exactly does this define like, can you make like a tent, like one of those nice canvas tents? Is that an accessory dwelling unit?
you're,
You're,
Or like, you know, the Conestoga wagons that all the campgrounds are putting in, like, does it have, what defines what it is? You know how you can go to Home Depot now and buy that shed with like the 2-story shed? And just like,
But so it has to be approved by the building inspector. It has to be building code, it has to have. Part of the that I put together, so it has to have permanent provisions. or
Sure.
something.
I don't go to campgrounds either.
I might need to amend that to say permanently affixed to the ground.
yeah,
It's all this shipping container.
Or you just wanna say it shall meet all requirements of the state building code.
Yeah.
So if you build it on a trailer and take the wheels off, lock it. See it's fixed. Oh, that's a whole nother thing.
Maybe simple, just like ask to meet building code, I guess. State building code for residents. So we learned something like that effect.
So one,
That's the intent.
Yeah, it's
It's gotta meet building code.
everybody good at one?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do one and then say must meet all building. Anything else to throw at this one?
One and done.
No, just the verbiage in I3, but I think you already wrote that down.
but then they can still put in for special use to get. Second.
Yeah, we'll just take a site plan approval instead. And you're gonna ask the fire chief his opinion.
Yeah, we want to do, what we want to see on
Mhm.
process.
What do we, so I guess let me ask you this, so what do we require currently for ambulance or any emergency service access for any residents?
That'd be the driveway requirements.
Yep.
Driveways should be. That's typically 16 foot clear and passable width. Has to be clear, 16 feet. Um, Typically, I apply this to the shared driveways. Do anything less than 100 doesn't require it. Section is a 4.24 feet.
So it says it has to be reviewed by the fire chief,
As if it's,
so that's what we
If it has
require
any
for towns.
So can we just say access for ADUs need to meet 4.24D? Something simple like that we already have stated.
Because that already says the here private driveway shall serve no more than 2 lots.
This isn't gonna be more than 2 lots in one.
One lot.
Right.
So access to ADUs shall meet 4.24D, which says you gotta be 16 foot wide, says if it's more than 100 foot long, it's gotta be approved by a fire chief.
Yes.
That way it's kind of the same thing, I guess, I mean, without adding
Yeah,
verbiage.
it looks like we've done our homework. Yeah.
To that effect.
That sounds good.
There's already a thing in there about structures 1,000 feet or more from the property.
Yeah, I just was reading that. You have to have one of those signs. Address please with the length of the driveway. You need a longer hose.
Fill with water, you can't hold them.
So is this enough with doing this? Do you want to view it one more time complete before we send it forward?
Yeah.
For sure. All right, so let's make those changes, then review it next month.
That makes sense to add something like that, Steve, for access,
It does.
because we already have all that stuff, and then that way it keeps it.
That's why this is a very everybody.
Is it okay that it doesn't, not everyone applies? You have to specifically call out what, because obviously it doesn't have to. 'Cause I mean, this is technically talking about different lots. It's not talking about the same lot or the same person. So is that gonna be confusing when people keep seeing in here over and over again? Lot, yeah, like private driveway serving a single lot, private driveway shall serve more than two lots, like there are a couple of these 1 through 9 that, and like number 7 doesn't apply at all, computing lot requirements. Some of the sections do apply or could apply. I mean, do we need to call out the specific sections or just say if applicable?
We might,
Okay.
that might
Well, I'll
come
let
up,
you-
that might
I'll
come
let
up
you
when,
decide.
when writing review.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Thank goodness.
Send those changes. Do that next month. All right, we move on to dimensional requirements for the lot.
Why are we doing this?
The square footage of houses is skyrocketed. It's so hard to build a bigger house. A lot of people don't have the
Right
means.
now, our minimum is 1,000, I think.
1,000 in every district except Lake Residential and RM. So basically just moved everything down to 720. Because that's where it is in Lake Residential and RM. As the minimum. And one more change was that before you had to have a minimum width of 20 feet for at least 2/3 of the width. 2/3 the length of the building.
Since it's too big.
I did shorten that to 1/2.
1,000 square foot. Yeah, I mean, right now, the current requirement in the township is 1,000 square foot. State only requires 120. I don't even know why you would require any more than that, because that's what the state requires, but, you know, so building costs now, to hire a contractor to build a house,
Right.
the finished cost is $250 a square foot. Over 1,000 square foot house, you're gonna pay $250,000 plus your property. So you're pushing 300 now for a 1,000 square foot starter. What's a 20-year-old kid making $16 an hour gonna do?
Where?
It's gonna give you.
You know, I mean, yeah,
960.
building costs are ridiculous.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's crazy. It's unattainable. That's part of the housing problem.
Where are the majority of available residential lots in this township? We don't have any BDUs.
Yeah,
Where would somebody,
It's not that many.
I don't know, they're, or they're large,
There aren't
right?
that many. I know there's a few in the village that are up for sale. But other than that, I haven't seen a lot for sale. That's the only practice that I know from my ends. One just moved right down the street from the speeding brake fair. It was down right in 24 hours.
Vacant lot?
Nope.
Or house?
Only had 15 minutes to walk through it. So that's something.
You don't have a stone gate.
Sold for 31 and asking.
I don't know where anybody would go to build a new home around. I mean, there's some small lots here and there, but lakes are all taken up for the most part. That's where you see tear downs and remodels and additions.
There'll be more property coming available. There just ain't much right now.
It'd be
But
nice.
there was, It's just a matter of time. I mean, there's still just too much
Costs are, like,
cash.
too
in
high
the
to do
system, right?
subdivisions right
It's
now.
going, it's leaving, so eventually.
This is such a house anyway.
720 is still a nice looking house.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not, I mean, you can still do a lot of things with that. I don't think that's, I think it moves it in, like you said, under 200 grand, which that is a huge thing for anyone wanting to do it. I mean, builders are gonna love it.
That is the minimum in the Lake Residential District, which is where most people are concerned about the property value.
Does anybody ever want a smaller house? in That district?
Sometimes they do, just the narrowness of the lot size, and maybe it's a cottage.
3 stories.
But normally people want about 1,500. As big as they can get.
I think the 720 works.
yeah.
720 basically says single story. You don't build a 2-story 720.
That's too expensive.
So
We're trying to make an affordable
I'll
house.
take a 7.2-story for as written.
our first home was 1,500, 2-car, but before we had children, and it seemed like, all right, we got extra room, for all, but it didn't seem ridiculous.
Our first house was 1,240 square feet, and we paid $106,000 to build it from the ground up. Man, those were the good old days.
This was on a slab, and the fellow has,
We had a crawl space, but
75,000.
yeah. Right.
That's the market.
Is everyone good with, in the RM district, I took out the minimum length requirement completely. Instead of having to be at least 20 feet, you can put in, say, a single line, or build something there.
I'm fine in that district. I mean, you gotta have somewhere that has something smaller.
Jesse, what's the cost per square foot again, roughly for
$250, $250 square foot, have house built.
250?
That's where all the builders are at.
Be like 90, 95 back in that.
I remember 110. Oh, it's that. And that's a crawl space, generally around here. Really do basements.
The crawl space versus basement doesn't affect your square footage price that much. Very, very, very little.
Yeah, it would be cool if there was property for millennials, yeah, millennials.
So my house built in 12, that I need to pay $100 square foot. Paid 210 for 2,400 square foot.
Yeah.
That's what it's built on.
But in only 10 years though, I mean.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, I understand, material cost, it's.
So with the ADUs then, I guess those are gonna follow the 720 square foot minimum?
So the only maximum I put for ADUs was it can't be larger than the house,
Right. But it's no minimum.
no minimum. Yeah, no minimum, just can't exceed the area of the house.
That's the way I'm reading it. Yeah.
There might be a 1,000 square foot mansion that wants a 5,000 square foot ADU, but I don't anticipate that being the one.
Those quarters,
Maybe limited to 4,000 anyway.
That one, everything pretty good on that one?
I think so.
Move on to, flag lots.
is one where section 420 talks about, originally they talked about lot area computation, and then they added flag lots. It's kind of an afterthought, and it just doesn't seem to work together. Seems like it should be its own separate section. And a lot of this was actually copy and pasted from 424B, which has all the private driveway requirements. Like we can eliminate a lot of wording if we just say that it has to meet all those requirements.
Right.
And that's specific.
So do we currently allow flag lots?
We do.
Okay. Because aren't most communities moving away from even allowing them?
I
Because,
think they are.
yeah,
I noticed, I was doing research. In the past, I know Dalton Township did allow them as a special land use, but I went to go find it in their ordinance and I couldn't find a mention of a flag lot specifically in the ordinance. So they might have removed that.
What's the biggest deal with flag lots? Other than, I mean, I guess I understand there's like more than one dwelling back there, but if it's just one.
We had some of them that had been, like the one ZBA meeting, all three
Yeah.
things that went before, it just happened to be. And we didn't have a clear definition of it. There's a lot of things we couldn't. I guess it was hard to answer some of the things for Stephen in the beginning part when people were asking questions, because there's nothing like this to point at.
And a couple of the issues, I talked to all of the road commission about it, about the minimum width of the flagpole. He said typically 50 would be ideal, just because you have a 40-foot wide flag for your culvert, and you're going to be potentially impacting 50 feet of width. So essentially to make that work, instead of less, you would need to be working in the right of way in front of your neighbors. So they can't use that the way they'd like.
What was that?
Mouse on.
Oh, stone cap, the corner of my
big ones.
eye.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense for deeper, wider culverts and things like that.
flag lots are also terrible for emergency services.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what started the discussion with Alan, was flag lots and how he hates flag lots and like, but we already allow them, so it's not like we're allowing them, we're just clarifying things, cause,
Well, it would be allowing a second lot
oh,
of flag lots. Flag lots proper, whereas if you were to run private driveway easement through another property, that easement could service two lots.
so we're allowing you to use a narrow driveway to access 2 lots in the back, like, is that what you're talking about, like? Now,
Yeah,
so there's 1 in the front and then 2 in the back, so
if
that
you
means,
own your access easement, you can only service one. If you don't own the access easement, it can service 2. So if the access easement is owned by the lot in front, it can service 2. But if it's not, if it's owned by the lot in back, it can only service 1. So it's just an inconsistency in our ordinance.
That's what came up in the one on Whitehall Road, correct? That was,
Maybe that's one where we put a distance requirement. Or,
Well,
it
that's-
service 2 lots if it's within.
yeah, that's what Alan was saying, that these distances get out of control sometimes, so, yeah, I think we should really look at what an acceptable distance would be. We don't need to make anything more difficult for fire service. I think they already have a rough enough time. I feel like I have to put my feet up or like sit up on the counters. Oh God, it's right there. It's over, it's in there now.
Oh,
How do you guys work like this? You know, they sell sticky traps and poison at the hardware store.
hanging around
We used to have a ton of Perhaps in the kitchen, but they're already in the kitchen.
Ready,
Now the mice don't know where the food is, they're still looking for it.
I've seen Thorn.
Yeah, can I borrow that just in case? Oh.
Do you want to include that in this then, to have a minimum?
I just thought maybe you could
Or-
really talk to Alan and see what his opinions on
What
flag
his
lots.
opinion of flag lots are.
If we're clarifying things, we might as well clarify it in a positive way for emergency services or,
We're not trying to loosen standards up necessarily, I don't think we're just trying to get them.
we're trying to make it more clear, I think,
Clear.
right? And, well, but
In a way,
we're,
it would be loosening standards,
oh yeah, that's true.
but it would be making them consistent,
Okay,
Which is better.
yes,
Because
it's,
you could have administratively approved that one for Whitehall Road then with this wording, correct?
So I wouldn't have been able to approve the 3 driveways on one. If you had a separate driveway further down Whitehall, and you had access easement servicing those 2 back lots, then that could have been.
He had to go because of the, but they wouldn't approve.
He also had his peculiarities, how he wanted the flag lots to be arranged.
That was, I remember, that's very odd
Yes,
layout.
we had many discussions.
It's terrible. Details.
Details. All right, so we good on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that pretty well takes care of our work session topics. There is ordinance. Is there anything, agenda items, ordinance 2023-09? Anything on that we have to? That's the heart and hands. You know, ordinance out here group, well, we didn't change anything. I counted up. That one was not changed. But that was ready to go. That's fine. No change potentially for Iowa Road.
is the X the subject parcel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to
Yeah.
get there.
That's a fun area right there. C2, C1, R1, R2, ag.
That happened that way because it was all rezoned C1. It was all zoned C1 prior to 2019.
Okay,
And then a group of people wanted to have it rezoned, wanted to have their properties rezoned back to R1 since they didn't plan on developing
mm-hmm.
commercial properties. And so those properties are the ones that wanted to rezone. Lorraine had sent out information saying, hey, if you want to rezone, let me know by this date, and we'll put you on the map as R1, otherwise you stay in C1. So this property at that time didn't wish to be included, without changing ownership, and they'd like to be R1. I don't think there's too many concerns about spot zoning. Existing one and the master plan backs up,
Mm-hmm.
kind of backs up spot zoning in this case, if you don't have a mixed use zoning district. So the only way to get mixed use is that you have different zonings throughout the area.
Any concerns?
No, it's all kind of mixed up right there anyways,
That's
so.
it.
Actually, maybe it's
Currently used potential, so.
lastly, the PR 2309 for right hands.
It's not that, bad. I don't understand why they had to pay $600 to get that done. It just seems.
Right, this was only $250, but still bad. It's basically because they're adding new structure, and it's about 30% more than the additional, than the existing structure.
It's hard to get a feel for it. But Stanhope's doing a good job with his submittals, it appears. You know, with his own and now customers. The drawings. He's a different architect this time.
You know, go do site visits, just check it out. Give us an idea of what we're looking at there, but we'll meet back here a week from tonight.
We could go to the hardware store and they're picky in there.
Talk to me about that tomorrow. Get the door out, I'm assuming you did.
Or are you still looking for the kitchen? I'm living in the kitchen for the last.
Air pressure, it's like for asbestos or something. What's that all about, you know?
It's the new door.
Okay.
It's our escape hatch. I'll make a motion on Jen.
Again.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Oh, I'm getting out of here. I can't work under these conditions.
You know,
She'll kill him by the time we're like.
Oh, yeah, mine would too.